Chris Angel. It's James Adair. We're back again for another episode of the Equity Accelerator podcast. I'm your host, James, and I'm a mortgage loan originator.
Yes.
Based in the Portland, Oregon area, licensed in the state of Oregon, licensed in the state of Washington. But this is our weekly time to talk about business ideas, to talk about building equity in your real estate business, building equity in your mortgage business. And if you're not in the real estate industry, like how to think about real estate strategically in a way that you'll get more out of owning your house. Today's episode is we're using Game of Thrones as a launching point because we just wrapped up our 9-year relationship with these people.
For those that haven't watched it or are the laggards, I suppose we can't do many spoilers, but we can share what inspired the title of this episode.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
it's not a spoiler.
It's not a spoiler. So, well, I guess no, it's not a spoiler at all. Not a spoiler.
Yeah.
And if I spoil it, it's your fault. It's not mine.
Okay. I won't spoil it.
Yeah. So today's episode is really, we're going to talk about storytelling. And at the end, towards the end of the final episode, Tyrion Lannister has this monologue where he talks about the most powerful force in the world is the power of a story, right? Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of truth in it. I want to do a quick callback because I think this idea is so profound, even though it doesn't have a ton to do with what we're talking about today. Yeah. But I also recently read this year, and when I say I read it, I mean I read half of it and then I got distracted and started reading another book. But in the first half of this book called Sapiens, have you heard of this book?
You told me about it. I haven't read it, but you told me about it.
Dude, it is exceptionally exciting. It's it's sort of like Carl Sagan level, like just big ideas, really mind expanding stuff. And it's the history of Homo sapiens, the history of humankind from like an anthropological perspective. And they talked about how in the Neanderthal cave dwelling times, we humans were a tribal hunter-gatherer. We weren't even the top of the food chain. We were kind of like close to the top, but not at the top. And we kind of lived in symbiotic nature with our surroundings. And we had but the tribes could be, naturally they would get to about 80 or 90 people, and then they would break off and another tribe would form. Until storytelling took root. And they defined the idea of storytelling in like a shared mythology allowed for tribes to really grow in size and become more powerful.
Interesting. Huh.
I know. It's like, so in a way, the idea that Tyrion Lannister at Game of Thrones said there's nothing more powerful than the story. I mean, there is definite science, anthropological science to back that up, that it is something that we connect to innately. We are telling ourselves a story all the time.
Right. Yep.
And that's how we see ourselves, and that's how we interact with, our surroundings. So I think storytelling is really, really profound, and there's so much more of it happening on a day-to-day, minute-to-minute basis than anyone really realizes.
Yeah. Right.
But and I think that storytelling could have a profound effect in real estate marketing. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Way to bring it back to.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nice.
So real estate marketing, you and I both know a lot of real estate agents, and we are active in social media.
Yes.
And, one of the things I see all the time are realtors just like posting a listing. Mm-hmm. Hey, look at this new listing. I'm excited about, like, sometimes they'll just say new listing alert, offered at, $415.
Yep.
Light and bright and cozy, open on Friday or whatever. And it's just, so they just kind of put some bullet points and put that information online, and it's kind of lame, right? Mm-hmm. It's,
right.
Most people aren't in the market for real estate. Right.
Yeah.
I think a statistic that I read, there's something called, I was just talking about it with a coworker of mine. I was like, where did that statistic come from? Because I'm using it for this presentation I'm giving next week. 2% of any client list is actively engaged in a real estate decision at any time.
Wow.
So
that's a cool stat.
It is a cool stat. And it's from, I asked him, he's like, oh, it's from Deluxe Marketing. And I'm like, well, I don't know what Deluxe Marketing is, but that's the source of the stat.
Yeah. Nice.
Google Deluxe Marketing and hopefully they're credible. But it seems true. I actually saw a presentation a couple of years ago where someone said, how many of you in this room are actively thinking about buying a new house? Raise your hand. And it was a big room. It had 1,500 people in it. And just a smattering of hands went up. And he was just like, yeah, there's probably 7 of you.
Right.
Out of 1,500. That's anyway, the math ended up being pretty close to what I'm talking about. And probably not everyone raised their hand. But the idea is that if you're posting real estate listings to social media, most of the people that see it aren't your audience. So by using storytelling concepts, you know, I think it would be so much. And so you and I also both read another book called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. I've seen him speak a couple times. He is an amazing speaker. The book is really, really powerful, where he breaks down the formula for a basic story.
Right.
And he says, basically, you can plug in the variables into your marketing communication, and it makes it that much more powerful. And it's called a brand script. And there's like sort of 7 ingredients. The first ingredient is every story has a character, like a hero.
Yep.
The hero has a problem. The hero meets a guide who gives them a plan, right? And calls them to action.
Yep.
It either ends in success or failure. And those are the 7 ingredients. So the hero, what's their problem? And the problem oftentimes is a confrontation with a type of villain, right? And meets and so the big idea in building a story brand is that when you're presenting yourself, when you're marketing yourself in your service, that the challenge is not to present yourself as a hero, which a lot of people naturally say, oh, hire me because I solve these problems very quickly and you know, we're the best.
That's famous for like listing marketing. If you're a listing agent, a lot of listing agents come in as the hero to the seller and say, I will save the day for you. I'm the best. Here's why we're great.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's so much more powerful. That's actually creates a lot of tension, believe it or not, in the conversation. If you understand storytelling and you understand that because we're all telling ourselves a story at all times, we're all the heroes of our own story. Your person that's looking to hire you is actually the hero. And you need to create all of your language around that instead of yourself as the hero. But the hero has to solve a problem and it needs a guide. And if you present yourself as the guide who can solve that problem, it becomes really powerful, really fast. And it's amazing how that works. But if you think of everything in terms of problems and solutions. If you are a realtor and you're listening to this and you're presenting a house that's for sale, ask yourself, what kind of problems does this house solve? Right?
Yeah. Right.
Maybe it's on a quiet cul-de-sac. Like, hey, are you tired of being afraid of your kids running out the door? Like, let your kids just like run wild at this house. Right.
If you can think about like where are they coming from? Like if it's a move up situation and they're coming, it's a first time home buyer house, but they're coming from renting.
Exactly. Yeah.
Bring the problems that they had.
Right. First time home buyers, you know, quit renting. I mean, I haven't thought of the actual copy around this, but I mean, if you go through the process of what problems does this house solve or what's special about this house that you can tell a little bit of a story about, like, you know, they got married in the backyard because it's so private, right? And it's, you know, this is a house that you can really do X, Y, or Z in instead of just saying, new listing, come see us. This one's going to go fast. Like if you can present that listing in terms of what problems the house solves.
That's it.
And speak in terms of if you are this, or if you're experiencing this kind of problem, then this property, you should check it out because it solves it in these 2 ways, or this has this one feature that's really helpful in that scenario.
I used to hear years ago, somebody had said, like, just ask your seller why they bought it. Cause a lot of times their story, like if they bought it because they liked privacy, that was the problem it solved for them. Or what have you enjoyed most about living here in the last 12 years? And they're
That's
like,
awesome.
these are the things we love the most. That's already telling you some of the story or some of the problems that it solved for them.
I one time helped an agent do an open house, and I helped him door knock a neighborhood, and he gave me a great script. And it was basically, we're door knocking, we're telling the neighbors about an open house, and we're door knocking with a couple questions, presenting ourselves as, hey, I just want to let you know we're having an open house on Saturday. Here's the details. And because we're also not just selling this house, we're selling this whole neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good.
Tell me what it is you like the most about this neighborhood. If we're trying to sell this whole like area, what's some features that come to mind? That really opened up some really great conversations.
Yeah.
Stuff that I never thought of.
That makes me think of if you were representing a buyer instead of a seller, and the buyer's got like multiple houses and neighborhoods to choose from, doing the same thing. I mean, that goes above and beyond customer service wise, but you go to neighborhoods they're looking at and ask the people that live in that neighborhood, why are you here? Now you've got some intel to bring back to your buyers about, so you have a story to bring back to your buyers about why people live there.
That just triggered an idea for me that I was hoping I meant when I was thinking about this episode today. I wanted to talk about this, and not just use storytelling, not just when you're presenting a listing into social media, but what about for agents that have a buyer and they're presenting the buyer to a seller and it's a competitive offer, right?
Yeah, totally.
And it's not, and oftentimes they'll include like an emotional letter around the story of the clients, but that might not be meaningful to the seller, right? So if you're an agent and you're trying to present a buyer to in a multiple competitive situation, hopefully you can make contact with the listing agent and get some intel on what are these sellers looking for. And a lot of times I'll just be like, just bottom line. Now they're looking for the most money. Why?
Right.
Just got to keep asking more. Be curious. Why? Can I ask you? I mean, of course, everyone loves money, but I mean, is there something in particular that is driving that? I mean, if they don't get $50,000 above listing, are they going to take it off the market? I mean, why?
Right. It's good.
Like what are they doing? Are they leaving town? Are they liquidating? Is this a 1031 exchange? I don't know. And then just try to gather information about who and think of the seller of that house as the hero of the story, not your buyers.
Yep.
And your buyers are the solution, and your buyers are the solution to the hero's problem, right? So if you can identify that more clearly and tell a story about how saying yes to this offer will solve X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, it's really good.
It may not be about money. It may be about terms. It may be about speed. It may be about rent back. Who knows? I don't know. But if you can kind of couch it in terms of storytelling and present the offer as a solution instead of just like, well, this is the best we can do. Let us know if we're close,
Right. Yeah. I think this takes some practice.
Yeah, for sure.
And I would say like a great way to practice is to try this online. Like you said, you and I can see our Facebook news feeds full of agents that are posting like just listed, or, here, this house is open on the weekend. Like it doesn't give me anything to connect to. So you can start practicing online with this, tell some stories and see if you get more engagement. Just see if there's any uptick in likes, comments. That is one way to evaluate if what you're saying and presenting is connecting with people.
That's true. You can do that. And also it just occurred to me, like, what if you presented a listing with a question? Like, how many of you would rather have this instead of that? Or, I don't know, like find some kind of area where you can engage your audience with a question. Like,
right.
How many of you prefer this wallpaper in this room versus the wallpaper in that room? Come check it out. See for yourself this weekend. Or I don't know, like something more engaging than just house for sale.
Yeah. If going back to your idea, if you think about like what problem this house solves, And then you could ask the question, like, how many of you have kids and worry about their safety playing in the street if the house was on a cul-de-sac, for example? Just frame, it's like a pre-frame. You're pre-framing what it is that you're offering, but you're pre-framing it with something that the viewer, the potential person could be meaningful for me.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so in the story brand, they talk about opening story loops, right? And that means basically asking a question or presenting something that the only way you can resolve it is by answering a question or clicking a button or showing up to an open house or buying a house, right? It's the only way you can close the loop is by taking an action. Right. So figuring out how to create those story loops is really, really powerful. So I've taken the training. I did a 2-day workshop last summer with Donald Miller's team, the Story Brand team. He has an amazing podcast as well, by the way. Do you listen to that one?
Yeah, I love that podcast.
Story Brand podcast, where he speaks. I guess it comes out once a week. He gets amazing guests, and they have tons of insight, and they're always sort of talking about these things. But I have access to the My Story Brand because I took the workshop. I have access to a lot of his tools. So if you're a real estate agent and you're listening to this and you want to dive into this a little deeper, I love talking about it. I'd love to share what I've got with you. And it has all kinds of angles and ways to apply to your listing presentation. It can potentially change the way you speak to people, not just your websites and brochures and marketing communications, but I think it's a really powerful just way to understand how people interact with each other. It's an interpersonal ecosystem. It's really cool.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You've already done this. You've already sat down with an agent or multiple agents and helped them through.
I did. That's right. I had a client of mine, she has a client as well, but an agent friend of mine who was really excited. She had been making this list of houses that she thought should be for sale that weren't, and that were a little bit distressed and seemed a little threadbare, but she was basically like, man, if these houses, I feel like they just don't know how much they are worth. And she made a list of the addresses, figured out who owned them, and she has like a direct mail campaign. Yep. And we went through a brand script process and created a really, really powerful call to action and a system. Basically, it's not like hire me because we created a story for them to step into. And, it's really compelling. I'm excited to see what comes of it.
Yeah. I think that's super helpful because sometimes as an agent, we're so inundated with the industry training that sometimes getting an outside perspective of like story brand training is helpful. And I think it's cool to bring something specific. Like if you listening to this had a specific project, a marketing project that's coming up, like I'm going to go farming, or I'm going to do a direct mail campaign for sale by owner, something. And you brought that to a meeting with James where you guys could actually create the story brand script for that particular project. That'd be a super constructive way to do that.
Awesome. Yeah. So call me, people. Yes. Email me. Let's do this.
How do they reach out to you? Give us your contact info. How do we reach out to you to schedule that type of
Right. So I'm glad you asked. So that can be found on the internet at pdxhomeloan.com. It has my phone number and my email on it. But if you want to email me, that's probably the simplest way to do it in this format. It's just my name, James, at pdxhomeloan.com is my email. So just email me and we'll get something on the books.
I love it. Well,
you can even be, you don't have to be in the Portland marketplace. We can do this over the phone.
Right. I love that. I love it. James, good stuff today. Regardless of how you all feel like Game of Thrones ended, this was a very great teachable moment in the last episode of the last season. So
I was pretty happy with Game of Thrones. I have to admit, I think I've watched every episode. It kind of had its ups and downs, and I know it's controversial, but I mean, how does this end? I
know
it's so complicated, and they had to make some calls. So my heart goes out to the producers of that show. I think they did really admirably under the circumstances.
Oh man, that's crazy. Good stuff. All right, James, good stuff today. Thanks, man. We'll catch you next time.
All right. Good day, sir.
Good day, sir.